Lawyers, what's a law that isn't real, that normal people insist exists? In the UK, people often claim that if an item is listed for sale in a shop, then the shop legally has to sell it to you at that price. This is not true at all, as the shop doesn't have to sell you anything at any price. Often as a gesture of goodwill, shops will honour erroneous prices, but they're under absolutely no obligation to do so. Back when I had a goldfish, RIP Carl, I went to Pets at Home to buy him a bigger tank. It rang through at £0. Checkout girl raises an eyebrow, we share a laugh. She messes about with the system a bit more, but all she gets is £0, so she calls her supervisor. We wait a few minutes, a few more, the queue is building behind me. Eventually she shrugs, prints a receipt for £0 and sends me on my way with my free fish tank. Good day for me and Carl. I was at TJ Maxx, or similar, once, and found a bunch of jars of orange honey, clover honey and the like for $1 a pop. Absolute steal. So I grab one and take it up front. It rang up for $1,000. The cashier and I gawked at it, laughed, and then she said something must have been entered wrong in the system. She punched in $1 and then only asked that I not abuse their return system. Probate attorney here. I've had many people ask me when the reading of the will is going to take place. I explained to them that only happens in movies. But one of these days I am going to have one and hire a mysterious blonde wearing a veil to sit in the corner quietly. Then I'll tell everyone that she inherits everything. Provided, of course, that she must adopt the descendant's cute but troublemaking 6-year-old child no one knew about. Or she can spend the night in a haunted house, her choice. There will now be a requirement for such a mysterious lady's presence at the reading of my will, written into my will, along with a handful of burly yet solemn fellows dressed in stereotypical G-man attire, complete with sunglasses and earpieces. One will be Russian, or at least able to fake the accent consistently, and should only be curtly acknowledged by the others. Every one of them should be entirely vague about how they knew me except from business. And the men should all refuse to acknowledge the presence of the veiled woman and feign terror if compelled to look at her. People think it's illegal to be videotaped in a public space. I saw someone on Nextdoor complaining about my reasonable right to privacy in a public place when someone was shaming 20 people standing together waiting for takeout. Sorry, but that's the opposite of how it works. If big-time celebrities can't stop paparazzi from following them and their family 24/7, I have no clue why ordinary people believe they have the right not to be caught on camera in public. Sovereign citizen stuff. I feel like enough folks have claimed to be sovereign citizens that it's become normal. But no, generally you can't declare yourself exempt from the laws in effect where you are. An arrest isn't magically invalidated if the police don't read you your rights on the spot. There could be a whole thread of just misconceptions people have from watching cop TV. Miranda rights protect you from self-incrimination when being questioned by the police for a crime. It doesn't mean they have to Miranda you the second you get arrested. If you aren't questioned, then it doesn't apply. People also think it's illegal not to let them make a phone call after being arrested. In California, it's not illegal to discuss your wages with co-workers, despite what your boss might say. The Red Green Show. I will always imagine that show portrays the ideal Canadian life. It's actually illegal nationally for a company to retaliate for discussing wages. They typically just make up some other reason to fire you instead. It's actually not illegal anywhere in the United States to discuss wages or form or join a union, contrary to what many employers may claim. I also strongly recommend you do both to protect yourself and your colleagues from being taken advantage of. And I'm not sure if this is state by state or country-wide, but in some or all of the US, it's actually illegal for employers to try to prohibit it. As a former lawyer, UK, I lost count of the amount of people that thought jaywalking was a crime. Unless it's a road that specifically states no pedestrians or a motorway, no such offence exists here. Too much American media. It technically is a crime in America, so people think it applies in other places. Even in America, that is on a state level. In some states, it's just on a city level. Even though many people think so, there has actually never been a Danish law allowing you to beat up a Swede with a stick if he should walk across the ice on Öresund during winter. But even though the law has never existed, it doesn't mean it shouldn't. No jury would convict you. No Danish jury would convict him. This isn't exactly what you're asking for, but I think it's valuable for people to know. You do not need to wait 24 hours to report someone as missing. I would hope not, since every cop drama I've ever watched says the first 48 hours are the most important. If someone has to wait 24 hours, they lost 24 hours of that 48. The crazy thing is they say it on actual true crime shows, like, don't spread that misinformation. Fighting words is not a defense to battery. It just means that the government can prosecute face-to-face insults likely to lead to a breach of the peace. ETA. Not to say that provocation defenses don't exist dependent on jurisdiction, but fighting words in the US refers to an exception to the First Amendment. It's a law that exists, but widely misunderstood is the concept of entrapment. If the police put a bait vehicle in a high-crime area, that is not entrapment. If the police are watching a bar known to overserve to see if there are impaired drivers at the end of the night, that is not entrapment. Entrapment only occurs when a government agent suggests committing a crime that you were not otherwise going to commit. In the UK, it's not illegal to park on someone else's driveway. It's classified as trespassing, a civil offence, not criminal, which means the police can't do anything. This particularly surprises people, as many think they have exclusive rights to the parking outside their house as well. You can go 10 over the speed limit. My dad thought this was true as he was new to the country and quickly found out by a speeding ticket that it was not. This comes from the margin of error of speed radars. They have a 5-mile margin of error normally, and thus people feel it's safe to go 5 over. If you're only going 5 over and get a ticket, you should contest it, and make sure to ask when the gun was last calibrated. Yeah, that's what my dad told me as well. He was ticketed in the 2000s, late 90s, but that was an isolated incident. South Florida drivers normally go 10 over, and the cops do so as well. As long as you're not holding up traffic or going blazing through the streets, you are fine. I'm no lawyer, but I don't feel like most of the villains in Scooby-Doo committed any actual crime. I don't think it's against the law to put on a mask and scare some trespassers on your own property. What if there's an abandoned gold mine underneath it? I think it would still belong to the property owner. In the UK, that it is illegal to drink under the age of 18. You can buy alcohol with a meal at 16, beer, wine, cider, and you're not breaking any laws if you give your child some alcohol in the privacy of your own home and they are over the age of 5. You can buy alcohol with a meal, but do restaurants have a final say as to whether or not they'll serve it? Yes, the restaurant chain I used to work at wouldn't sell alcohol to anyone under 18, even if it was just one beer to have with a meal. Good Samaritan laws aren't nearly as broad as people think. For context, I work in emergency services. Some people believe that "I was trying to help" are the magic words that can get them out of any sticky situation. If you live together for X period of time, you're automatically legally married. There are different time periods for different purposes, and being common law doesn't always have the same effect as being married. So for example, your employer might give your partner spousal benefits after 1 year, but division of property laws might only apply after 3. And all of this varies from one place to another. Some places don't have division of property laws or common law spouses, for example. In the US, only 8 out of 50 states have any form of common law, and most of them require more than just cohabitation. You have to actually present yourself as a married couple. The sheer number of times I've heard someone say, "We're common law in New York City," is absurd, considering New York abolished common law marriage in 1933. No laws against driving barefoot. Mandatory addition in the US. In Germany, while appropriate footwear is not directly required, you can be found at fault if your choice of footwear or lack thereof leads to your inability to avert an accident. I believe it's the same in Australia. If you have an accident whilst wearing flip-flops, You might struggle with insurance to prove that wearing them didn't cause or add to the causing of the accident. I'm not driving, I'm travelling. That one is incredibly hilarious when it's on video and shared. Officer, I'm not driving under the influence, I'm travelling. When my parents die, the government is going to seize a big chunk of the inheritance and I'll get nothing. In the US, this is a very common misconception. Although state inheritance taxes vary, the US federal taxes on inheritance don't actually kick in until the estate's value exceeds $5 million. So, for the vast majority of working class folk, the federal inheritance tax won't have any effect. But people will still talk to their family lawyers and ask about how much Uncle Sam is taking away when Mom or Dad die. Paralegal. A lot of people think that the law requires you to be a good, decent person. If I'm sitting on a bench and see a blind person about to walk into the path of a bus, it's completely legal for me, in the United States, to remain silent, take my cell phone out, and take a video of his death. It's even legal for me to profit from the video. I'd be a monster for doing it, but there's no law imposing a duty on me to tell this stranger, "Watch out for that bus!" You should never tell a blind guy to watch out for a bus. Listen out for that bus! Freedom of speech in my country. That's from watching too many US movies. In Canada, it's pretty common for people to parrot American laws as if they were their own. I'm a lawyer. This is not a law that doesn't exist, but a law that is misunderstood. Typically, you can't just go get a restraining order against anybody. Most states have specific laws for who you can get a restraining order against. Typically household members or former romantic interests. Usually it's only in domestic violence cases or for victims of crimes. You can't just get a restraining order and comically use it to keep someone 100 feet away. In the United States, at least. I'm a law student, and definitely self-defense. Even though the law exists, people in my country really think it's broader than it actually is. It's federal law in the US that a plainclothes or undercover police officer has to identify themselves as law enforcement if asked. No, it's not the law, and they can tell you whatever they want. I'm reminded of that Breaking Bad cold open where Badger gets arrested for selling product to an undercover officer because of this exact made-up law. In many countries, escaping from prison is not an offence because the desire to be free is so inherent to humans that it needs to be respected. This is providing you don't commit another felony while escaping, like killing a guard. Germany is one of those countries. A real but widely misunderstood law is HIPPA. People think it protects you from literally any discussion of your health issues by anyone at all. Nope, not even close. Driving with interior overhead car lights on is not illegal. I had an experience with this. Got pulled over as a very new driver, 16, because my interior lights were on. The car and I were so new to each other, I didn't know all of the controls and I had just left a bright parking lot. No laws broken, but the cop told me he'd stop me for suspicion of DUI because it's an indicator of impaired driving. It's indicative of lack of attention. They cannot arrest a husband and wife for the same crime. That common civil liberty protections restrict individuals or organisations. Freedom of press, speech, due process, etc. only restrict the government. For example, most organisations can restrict your speech based on their internal policies. There are incidences where an organisation has to provide certain protections based on federal funding, i.e. schools implementing Title IX. Not a lawyer, but unfair firings are oftentimes not illegal. People often assume that if they were treated unfairly at work, like getting fired for something trivial that someone else got away with, that some kind of law has been broken and that they have a strong case for suing. In most cases, this is not true. There are only very few reasons for firing that get a company in trouble. Firing for race, colour, national origin, religion, sex, age, or disability is illegal in all states. Firing for anything else varies from state to state. In many states, this means you can be fired for a medical condition, your sexual orientation, tattoos, that stupid look on your face, your weight, etc., or just because I'm not attracted to you.